when we had the meeting, I said, we're going to put Nigel in as the new matchmaker. And I told Joe, and I said, and we want Adam Pearce to be the color man. I got to backtrack a minute, but the story will be worth it. You're getting an exclusive here. My original vision for Ring of Honor television was that Kevin Kelly and Adam Pearce would be let me try that again, Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan. You have a fairly young but still experienced play-by-play man who knows the sport and knows what he's doing, and you have a color commentator. Even though Joe Rogan's a fucking stand-up comic, he's also trained, and he's the world's biggest MMA junkie and nut, and he's a kind of a jock kind of guy, and they look kind of cool together. And I thought Adam Pearce would be perfect in that role because he's an ex-wrestler. The Ring of Honor fans would know him, but at the same time, he's an ex-wrestler that nobody else would know because he's never been on the big television, so he's not spoiled, and he hasn't shilled for other people. He's well-spoken, he cuts a great promo, got a great voice, etc. There was only one problem with that, in that Adam had left on somewhat bad terms with the office of Ring of Honor before under Kerry Silkin. Not with Kerry, but with Sid and Ross, the people who worked in the office. Ross Abrams, the merchandise weasel, and Sid was the office manager, Sid Eck. And the reason why Adam had been let go as booker is because he had finally sent Kerry an email with the opening line, first of all, fuck Sid and Ross. So right there, that pretty much, but it was at that point, and I could identify with it. And so anyway, that's why Adam was let go as booker, but we went in the summer leading up to the first TV taping, summer of 2011, leading up to the taping in Chicago, a couple months beforehand, we had gone to Kerry and we said, look, we want to have Adam do color. I've talked to him. He's sorry the way things went down. He wants to make things right. He will come in and shake hands with Sid and Ross if you want. He will apologize. Harsh words were said, whatever the fuck. He wants to be part of this team. Kerry said, it's business, do what you guys want to do. Because Hunter, Gary Jester, and I, all three went to him. Then we went to Sid, who a lot of people didn't like him, but he was a man. He said, hey, it's business, I understand. Water under the bridge, do what you think is best. And we went to Ross, and Ross was like, Adam is a cancer, and I just don't know. And he said harsh things about me, and he was going to punch me, and he was going to do this and that. Now, actually, literally, the executive producer of the television show, the booker, and the office manager are going to the weasel that sells the fucking T-shirts and basically running by him the thought of who the color commentator for the nationally syndicated television show on 70-something stations is going to be. We didn't have to. It was a formality, but we wanted everybody to be cool and on the same page. And he's saying, well, I'll think about it. And I said, I wanted to say, you'll think about it.
Is he in any position of authority to...
He's the merchandise weasel.
Yeah, but so why bother?
Because we wanted everybody to be happy and we were trying to do things the right way. And that's what happens when I try to do things the right way and don't yell and scream at people. That's why I've yelled and screamed at this many people. So I said, tell you what, Ross, this Saturday night, I said, call us on Monday and we'll talk more about it. He didn't call any of us on Monday. He called Joe Koff on Monday and said, well, this guy's threatened me and this and that. And he made a stink and he intimated that he would call human resources in Sinclair Broadcasting and file because he wouldn't feel safe in his work environment. And because his little balls, if you took Ross's balls and you rolled them in a drinking straw, it'd look like a kernel of corn rolling into a storm drain. And his pussy hadn't been powdered. And he was on his fucking rag that fucking week because he's a fucking gutless prick. And he was upset, so he threatened a human resources complaint. So Joe Koff has just bought this company for Sinclair Broadcasting and don't want human resources calls, so he said, ixnay Adam Pearce. Guess what that did? That meant that we had no color guy and couldn't figure out a color guy. Because we didn't just want some independent wrestling guy to be the color guy, we wanted to break out of the pack good, right? Well, we thought of Nigel McGuinness, but the problem was Nigel McGuinness was still under contract to TNA. And so we called Nigel and we said, can you get out of this? He said, well, I'm working on it now because that whole thing was drama for another day. I was the backup color guy. I was going to have to be the executive producer and the matchmaker and the color guy also until 13 days before our first taping. Nigel got his release from TNA, and we had told Joe Koff, Nigel has some strong points, former world champion, the fans will respect him, he knows the product. Negative is he's never done color before, he's got an accent, and it may be difficult for some people, even if it's English, so be aware of this and we'll work with him. And Kevin Kelly made it a project that he was going to work with Nigel and bring him up to speed on announcing as best he could. Well, from the start, Joe didn't like Nigel's commentary because, well, he's not excited enough, and I can't really understand his accent, and he doesn't have everything we had said, and he's inexperienced. So Kevin worked with him, and he got better, and he got better, and he got more into it, and gradually, by the next spring, all the fans on the internet and the Wrestling Observer poll and everybody, wow, they're the best announced team in the business. And Joe still didn't like his announcing and wanted me to be the announcer. I said, I can pop the corn too, Joe, but no. So then finally, when we floated the idea of making Nigel the matchmaker and bringing in Adam as the announcer, Joe said, yes. So what about Ross? Well, it's been a year and a half now. I'll talk to him. He's going to have to get over it. So we can make the deal. Because Adam had already made one show for us in Fort Lauderdale when part of the deal getting the building for my friend who was an NWA promoter was that we would, send a Ring of Honor guy to his NWA, Howard Brody. What the fuck? Everybody knows who it is. We sent Adam Cole and myself worked his show, and then Adam Pearce came over, returned the favor, and worked one of our shows, and that way everybody was happy. And there had been no murders and no incidents. And of course Ross pouted like a little goddamn schoolgirl with a shiny new vibrator over in the front and didn't come back. And so anyway, Adam was willing to shake his hand. I don't want to talk to him. Yeah, well, okay. So I call Adam Pearce and I book him for Final Battle and the first TV of 2013, make the deal on his money and tell him he's got the job going forward. And we're really excited about it. And Hunter calls him, does the same thing. Ross gets wind that he's the surprise new announcer, and without calling Joe Koff, calls Human Resources in Sinclair and files a complaint. And Human Resources, who we have found out have more power than the federal government in the corporate world, because if Human Resources says, go home and choke your mother's fucked. She ain't gonna make it, right? They call Joe and say, no, don't bring this guy in. Ross says he will be, his life has been threatened and he'll be unsafe and blah, 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 and he'll sue us, which was going to be Ross's way of probably getting some money and getting out of there. Because he hated Greg as bad as everybody else did, and merchandise sales were down because they cost too much, because Greg raised all the prices while they lowered the quality, et cetera, et cetera.
We were giving them a good deal, and they still pulled the rug out from under us. You can explain that later on.
I don't even know about that, because that, of all the things of all the shit pies that were flying at me, that wasn't one that I even saw coming to duck. It may have, gone somewhere else. Yeah. But anyway, so fortunately, this happened the week after Bell Vernon, and I wasn't the one because I would have quit then, but I would have been the one to have to call Adam Pearce and debook him, a guy with kids at the holidays that had just been promised a new job that he was happy about, because Ross Abrams, the merchandise weasel, was able to dictate the color commentator on a program airing on 60 or 70 something broadcast television stations across the country because he's a pussy and couldn't get over the fact that 3 years beforehand a guy in the wrestling business had said he wanted to beat the fuck out of him because he was a prick. So fuck you, Ross. You fucking pussy weasel. You fucked one of the boys, you fucked the television program, you fucked our plans for your own selfish pussy fucking purposes, and I still have a hole in my garage wall that was put there by this fist when I heard the fucking news, because you're a fucking little prick. Okay, so backing up, Bell Vernon. That was the first weekend in November, so October, September, back around the last or middle of August. We were talking about the TV tapings for the end of the year, and also now in October, November, and December of 2012, that's 3 months, right? Ring of Honor ran 4 events in 3 months, and at the holidays. And the guys don't get paid unless they work. And well, in the fourth quarter, the profit and loss, according to Greg, we shouldn't lose money, because he wouldn't take into account that if you lose money on a live event just selling the gate and merchandise, you have a DVD of that event that you're going to sell forevermore until the end of time. Right. And also the TV stations can sell sponsorships. Mm-hmm. But no, the live event has to make money, which, well, guess what? I don't think so. All events as live events make money, right, just on the live event. So for the fourth quarter, they didn't want to. So the boys had 4 shows to work in the last 3 months of the year, so they weren't happy about that. But also they wanted to get out of Baltimore. I said, why do we want to get out of Baltimore? It's the one successful town. Well, because the building rent, and it's so expensive to rent the shit. Well, gosh, I wish we'd have thought we could have the stuff already. But, anyway, why we were in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a great crowd. Let's go to Pittsburgh. But it wasn't actually Pittsburgh. It's Bell Vernon, Pennsylvania, the Rostraver Ice Rink. And we had been there at the end of June for a house show and drew 500 people. Oh, there was this little thing also that signing autographs live in person that night as a favor to Gary Juster was Bruno Sammartino in fucking Pittsburgh. The first time Ring of Honor's ever gone to Pittsburgh, Bruno's signing autographs. We draw 500 people. So because of that, they want to come back in November to the same place with no Bruno. And do a TV taping. First time ever in 3 months that we're going to be in Pittsburgh. On the conference call with everybody, and I've mentioned the weekly argument between me and Greg, I said, look, number one, we have a TV studio in Baltimore where we shoot our promos, where we have our locker set and our good lighting, and it's upstairs from the offices, and where we do our editing. We have the building in Baltimore where at least everybody knows how to all the people know how to build it out for television and how to run the equipment and everything, and the guys know how to work it. And we're right there, so we can start post-production the very next day and get these shows turned around, because it was always 4 or 5 days afterwards that we'd do post-production 12 hours or more a day to get the shows done. I said, in Rostraver at the Ice Garden in Bell Vernon, not only are we an hour from the Pittsburgh airport, but we don't have the studio to do the promo day the day before. Also, the place looks like shit for television unless we heavily pipe and drape it. The crowd is going to be down because we've just been there. We don't have Bruno, etc., etc. We're going to do 5 TVs, 5 weeks of TV leading up to Final Battle, the biggest show of the year. We need to have this shit look good. But it's going to be cheaper. Basically, they were going to save $20,000. Mm-hmm. Now, $20,000 sounds like a lot of money. Besides, until you realize that Sinclair Broadcasting buys television stations for $100 million, then it's not so much. But also,
it's broken out over 5
weeks. $20,000 divided by 5 weeks of TV is $4,000 per week of TV. Divide that by the 60-something or however many stations at the time they were on. It's $40 per station per show per week, right? I was almost willing to take up a fucking collection. And Gary Juster says, well, it's Greg's idea. Let's just try it once. And then Gary Juster says to me in front of everybody on the conference call, Jim, we have almost 3 months to make it look good. And we know if we don't, you'll never let us forget it. All right, motherfucker, my old friend, my partner that's turned on me and fucking rolled over. Very good. I'm not going to say another word about it. We're going to go to Bell Vernon. We're going to do TV, right? So here is the week, and this is supposed to be a therapy session, right? And since I told you, breaking kayfabe, I had told you, I had told you, I've never had a substance abuse problem. I've never been in prison. Nobody in my family's ever killed each other. What the fuck could I talk about? But this started part of my therapy because I'm wrestling crazy. So this was part of my therapy. This was my mindset the week going into that. My anniversary, my wedding anniversary is October 31st. It's Halloween because that's Stacy's favorite holiday. And our weekly conference call was usually on Tuesday. I had to leave on Thursday morning to go up to Bell Vernon for the Friday promo day and the Saturday taping. Then I would go on to Baltimore on Sunday where we would do post-production on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I told my old friend Gary, I'm not going to do your goddamn conference call this week because I'm not going to argue with Greg because Stacy and I are going to get ready on Tuesday for our anniversary on Wednesday before I have to leave town for a week. I'd been asking Gary Juster on the phone in personal private conversations and on emails for the previous 2 months. We've got to do something, Gary, you and me, as grown, adult, 50-year-old white men, to go and talk to Joe Koff, who's a grown, adult, 60-year-old white man. And I'm not saying Greg's black. I'm just saying we're all of this. It's not like there's a goddamn culture clash here. There's not like it's young guy versus old guy or black versus white. You and me and Joe were all adult, over 50-year-old fucking men that ought to be able to sit down in a room and say, regardless of whether you like this little prick or not, he has alienated everybody. Nobody wants to do business with him. Nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody likes him, and he's fucking shit up. We have got to be able to do that, and I don't want to be the odd duck, Gary. I don't want to be the only one, again, bitching and complaining like Jim Cornette always supposed to do. I'm trying to get you to go with me. Oh, Jim, I wish you wouldn't let Greg bother you so much. Oh, Jim, he sounded like Barnett. Oh, Jim, I wish you wouldn't get so upset about this. Well, I am upset about this because I've promised these guys they're going to have work. I've promised these fans they're going to have this great television production. I've promised everybody that credible wrestling can work. And this fucking prick, through little things and big things, is chipping away at every part of the idea and not only doing it, but alienating everybody in the process. Ross, the merchandise weasel, before I was mad at him for vetoing Adam Pearce the second time, would come up and hand me a package of the new DVDs and say, here's our overpriced DVDs. And fucking, everybody in production would go, well, we would have done that, but Greg said there wasn't any money for it, or this or that or the other thing. And like I said, he alienated 2 ring crews, ran them off, talked to them like field hands. He was smart ass to a lot of the boys. He was definitely a smart ass to me. So anyway, on Tuesday, I don't do the conference call because Stace and I are running around doing stuff. On Tuesday night, though, I see an email that I happen to check. He took that opportunity while I wasn't on the conference call to make the announcement that beginning in March in Chicago, the pay-per-view and TV taping to save money would be done the same weekend in the same building. Saturday night pay-per-view, Sunday afternoon TV. You remember hearing about this, or are you completely in a bubble?
No, I have it in my writing.
Okay, you have it in your writing. Well, believe me, I didn't need it in fucking writing to know it was a fucked up idea. And I knew it wasn't going to work, and I called Gary Juster immediately. I go, when the fuck did this happen? Well, today on the conference call, Greg said it will save so much money. I said, are you fucking out of your mind? I said, not only on a performance standpoint, do these guys now have to beat the fuck out of each other in Ring of Honor style matches within basically twice within 16 hours of each other, but also it's everything that we can do to start at noon and lay the television show out by 6 or 7 o'clock bell time, and then we don't get out till after midnight, and then we got to come for a pay-per-view. We'd have to get there at 8 o'clock a pay-per-view, and then we'd get there at 8 o'clock the next morning to lay everything out for a 2 o'clock bell time. The production crew wouldn't leave the building for 36 hours, which came to pass in New York. The producer and director did not leave the building from 9 o'clock on Saturday morning until 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on Sunday evening. I said it's going to kill the fucking house of one, if not both, because it's going to take the edge off the pay-per-view, and we used to run Sunday afternoon all the time. Goddamn, we used to draw. Everybody used to draw. Wrestling used to draw. But it's not going to anymore. You're going to kill Chicago. If you do it in New York, you're going to kill New York. WrestleMania weekend, maybe they can get by with it, but it ain't going to work anywhere else. I said, so you're going to kill our best towns. You're going to kill the guys physically. The production crew is going to fucking mutiny. And from a booking and continuity standpoint, we have to do a promo day on Friday to do all the pre-tapes that go in the TV shows. So we're going to do a promo day on Friday talking about the pay-per-view that takes place the next day in past tense, hoping that everything turns out the way we want it, and then shoot TV on Sunday. I said, why did you let him get away with this? Well, Jim, if you had been on the call, you could. I said, you're a grown fucking man. There were grown fucking men on this phone call. And nobody said this? Well, you just say it so much clearly and plainly and concisely than everybody. I just have balls, and none of you do. And especially you, Gary, you don't, right? So I'm in a bad mood for my anniversary. I stay up Tuesday night sitting on a couch fuming about now they're going to kill what's left of our fucking towns, and everybody's going to blame me again.
What a beautiful Wednesday that was.
Oh, wait, it gets even better. So I get 2 hours sleep. I wake up in the morning mad, wanting to choke Greg. We go to our afternoon movie that's the start of our festivities where she gets a cold and starts sneezing and honking, and by the time we get out of the movie, we end up going back home and sitting and have Chinese food on the couch. Then I got to leave and drive Thursday morning all the way up to Bell Vernon, where I hear that Brad Armstrong has passed away in his sleep. I hear this on the phone from Jeff Jones. Lawler has just had a heart attack the previous month. Brad Armstrong, 6 months younger than me, has just died in his sleep. I'm getting 2 hours of sleep a night, wanting to kill this fucking guy, going to what I know is going to be a disaster, and in a couple months have a bigger disaster in front of me where now we're all going to have to work twice as hard and have twice as many headaches and not leave a building sometimes for 36 hours in order to do a comparable job to what we've been doing. So I decide on the way up there that we're going to have a meeting about fucking Greg and his fucking bright ideas. And we're going to do it in Baltimore when everybody's there. And I told Gary, I believe you can be part of it or not, but I'm going to tell Joe what I fucking think, right? So I check into the beautiful Hampton Inn in Bell Vernon on Thursday night and eat at the Eaton Park. And then Friday morning I get up and they've arranged for us to do promos in the studio of the station they own in Pittsburgh. Okay, well, it's not actually in Pittsburgh. It's kind of north of Pittsburgh, which means I drive, and I don't know if you've driven through Pittsburgh lately, but from Bell Vernon, it's the windiest way through Pittsburgh to go through and across those bridges, and it's fucking raining, and finally got to North Pittsburgh, and this TV station's up on top of the hill. It was 50-something miles, took me an hour and 20-something minutes. You get from the hotel where the building is to the TV station, and I get there, and they're setting up. We are in a studio. We're in what used to be a studio, but is now being used as a storage room. And nobody thought to even, much less our locker set and our fancy lightings and our different things, nobody even thought to bring a goddamn placard with the Ring of Honor logo. What we have is a black sheet with a old apron skirt with the Ring of Honor logo on it, on black felt, thrown over a black sheet. We're using one of our new broadcast quality cameras from the new camera package that they've been able to put together. So at one point, as we're shooting interviews in this storage room in front of this black sheet for this fucking major television production we do, the camera falls in half. The lens falls off, so the body of the camera goes back and the lens goes forward, and the only thing that kept both of them from hitting the ground were all the cables attached to them hung over the cameraman's shoulder, and he was able to catch everything, right? So our cameras are literally falling apart. We're there for 7 hours shooting all these promos, but they did bring in some pizzas. Then I take Mark Davis, the editor, and Dan Bynum, the director, in the car, and we decide to take the long way back to the hotel because at least that's all interstate. So it's 20 miles farther, but it takes us about the same amount of time. But since it's raining and it's dark now, and I eat at the Eaton Park again, and then the next day I get to the ice rink in Belle Vernon. Now,
that's where the fun begins.
I've been involved in some shoestring, budget, outlaw, mud show fucking wrestling operations in my time. I've been at wrestling shows in truck stop parking lots in the Dyersburg, Tennessee County Fair and all kinds of bullshit, right? I get there at 11 o'clock in the morning and our TV trailer is parked in the back, and of course it's about 43 degrees outside and a light drizzle. And I'm a free perspirer. I sweat heavy, right? But I got a coat on because it's chilly. I go in the building and I don't take my coat off. As a matter of fact, I come to realize that I didn't take my coat off for 14 fucking hours. That's how cold it was. They had the big elephant door at the back up while they were loading all the equipment in. And I go in and I said, well, it's cold in here, but we'll get the heat on eventually. I guess they're trying to save money. And I look around and it's the building I remember. It's concrete bleachers, literally concrete bleachers. You sit on concrete bleachers, and it looks like a big airplane hangar, and at one end they've got a bar, they have a bunch of fluorescent lights and a window and everything upstairs, and the other end they got all the Coke machines and the video games and everything, and it seats 1,000 people, and we ain't gonna have 1,000 people. So I'm expecting, that we're gonna put the ring down at the end, so the ring crew's already there. So I said, yeah, I went up, I said, put the ring down at the end here, so that way we can shoot across, and if we have 400 people, at least blah, blah, blah. I said, where's our pipe and drape? Mark Davis looks at me and says, Greg ixnayed the pipe and drape. What? We have no black pipe and drape to cut off the half of this building that's empty, to cut off these fluorescent lights, to cut off the pop machines and the video games. What are you talking about? Well, come to find out, here's what happened. Because then when they started pointing fingers, Dan Bynum, the director, who is also the technical producer to line up the equipment and everything, asked Greg, the little prick, what is in the budget for pipe and drape? And Greg, of course, giving a snotty answer, as he always did to everybody, said, we don't have one. Now, he was just being an asshole, and that's what he does to people. And yes, Dan should have pressed it, but Dan...
He took that to mean...
No, he didn't take it to mean. He was just like, you know what, motherfucker, I'm sick of fucking arguing with you, like everybody else is. So he just took that as the answer. Okay, you little fucking asshole, because nobody wanted to fucking deal with the guy, right? So he didn't say anything about it again. Well, then Greg, when somebody called Greg on it, Greg was, well, I was just saying that. I was just kidding. He didn't give me a budget. Well, he didn't give you a budget because you were a prick and you said we don't have a fucking budget after we'd had this big conversation that everybody was in on where Gary Juster promised me we got 3 months to make it look good. So we got no pipe and drape. And of course we had no fans because the fans that live around there had been to that building before in that weather and knew what the fuck it was like. And they'd also just seen wrestling there 3 months beforehand. And of course, Gary Juster wanders in from Starbucks about 3 in the afternoon, after which I've already been working 4.5 hours. And at that point, we were doing our production meeting, and it was one of those Bills on Gorilla fucking deals where I'm looking around at what we've got, and it's embarrassing, and I'm throwing my fucking format. And then Joe Koff starts following me around. Are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you need anything? Like I'm goddamn ready to flip, and I've just walked away from a state home. Which also used to drive me crazy because he knew I was mad and he knew why I was mad, but he kept asking me, was everything okay? And I love you, Joe, but you know you did this. So I called him around the curtain. I said, no, everything's not okay, Joe. And then we're going to have, I don't have time for it now because we've got to pull this thing off tonight. But Greg is the problem. Nobody likes Greg. Nobody wants to work with Greg. Greg is a fucking idiot. Greg's an asshole. Well, it's his style, not his substance. No, it's both. It's his style and his substance, and we need to talk about that this week. But right now, I got to pull this fucking show off, right? So we don't have time because if I start now, the shit's going to happen anyway. So we get everything laid out as best we can, and the fans come in, and literally they have on the ski caps, and they have gloves on, and they never take their coats off. And when they clap, it sounds like thud, thud, thud. And they're trying, there's 325, I think, of them, and they're trying as best they can to make noise. And Davey Richards and Michael Elgin had the rematch of their fabulous 5-star match, and still put on a hell of a performance under those conditions. And by the time they got finished, it was so cold in that building, they were steaming like the bald-headed football players when they take their helmet off in Green Bay. They were steaming. It was so cold in that place, and you could see every empty seat, no matter where you shot with the camera. The director was going out of his mind. He actually just about had a nervous breakdown that night and was yelling at people. He was pulling his hair out. And you could see that it just was the most low-rent, low-budget looking bunch of bullshit that I've ever been involved with to go on that many television stations. I did Smoky Mountain shows that looked better, right? And so anyway, we work all day, we set the thing up, we ring the bell at 7 o'clock, we got to do 5 TV shows, we're in the TV trailer, running back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Security flaked on me when they were supposed to be pulling Jay Lethal back because we didn't have proper gorilla position fucking help. So I went back there, and poor Todd Sinclair, the referee, well, they were here, and I tried to find them. I screamed. I'm like, God damn, we're trying to get a top baby face over, and you can't even get these fucking stooges to stick around. What the fuck, right? People, can we get this thing together? I knew it was a train wreck, and it was getting away from us. And then one show was 6 minutes over, and one show was 2 minutes under, and whatever the fuck. But finally, we come to the last match. It's a Pittsburgh Steel City street fight, whatever the fuck. It's almost midnight. Pittsburgh Steel City street fight. It's scum. Steve Carino. So I can't even remember the match. Like, I've had PTSD. I put the match out of my fucking mind. But the final bump is Steve Carino takes a superplex onto a guardrail that's been leaned up in the ring. So he takes a superplex onto the guardrail, boom, and that's the 1, 2, 3, and then Steen's going to get in the ring and cut a promo. But we're seeing on the monitor that as they're rolling Steve out, he's not going anywhere, and people are helping him. And I'm trying to get, is Carino okay? Is Carino okay? Well, of course, they can hear me, but nobody can talk back to me because they're all at fucking ringside trying to help Steve Carino. Steen's cutting his promo. People are starting to file out. Soon as the thing's over with, I run in there. Carino's back behind the gorilla position, laying there. He can't get up. He can't breathe. He can't talk. Has he broken ribs? Has he punctured a lung? Is he paralyzed? I don't fucking know. I'm not a goddamn doctor, and I don't even play one on television. Holy shit, fuck almighty. The perfect end of that. They've already called an ambulance. Perfect end of this goddamn fiasco. So I do what I'm supposed to do. You're a local guy. You got a cell phone in a car here, right? Okay, you're going to follow the fucking ambulance. You stand by here. You go tell all the guys who came in a van from the airport that's an hour away that Hunter is driving, tell everybody, get fucking dressed, get their shit together so they can get back to the airport as quick as possible because Hunter's going to have to take them and he might want to go back to the hospital. You go up to the front, get somebody from the office to come back here with some fucking money because you are an independent wrestler and you may not have enough gas to follow this ambulance and they may charge him some money when they get him to the hospital. You go, get money, get office. Boom, 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 boom. Let's have some fucking action.
Where's the office?
I'm about to tell you. So while Carino is still not breathing, and by the way, we are, did I mention, 5 miles off the Pennsylvania Turnpike in the middle of fucking nowhere, so the ambulance takes forever. It was like waiting on that ambulance for Andy Kaufman in Memphis that night. The ambulance around the corner was on a run, so they had to wait 20 minutes for one to come from somewhere. So it's here comes somebody back. I think it was Jeff Jones. The office is gone. What do you mean they're gone? 5 times the previous year, Gary Juster and everybody that wore a suit and tie that carried money around from the show had left me in a position where the ring truck needed money to be, because they couldn't just give them a gas card. They have to turn their expenses in, they'd reimburse them. And then Greg wouldn't give the guys money in cash if they turned a receipt in. Well, you'll get your check in the mail when we do the proper accounting and blah, blah, blah. Ring truck needed gas money, I'd give it to him. Wrestler didn't have enough money to get to the fucking next show next weekend, I'd give it to him. Then I'd turn it in and they'd yell at me because I was fucking up their bookkeeping. Then stick around and give them some fucking money. Well, we told them if they turned their receipt in, we'd mail them a check. Motherfucker, imagine that you were goddamn wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops with nothing in your pocket but a check for $1,000 Sunday morning at 9 o'clock in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, and you're an independent wrestler. What do you, with no bank account, what the fuck do you have? What the fuck do you have? You can't get a bowl of soup, jack off, just because you're a corporate fuck, right? And so 5 times they'd left me and I would scream at Gary. You left me again, motherfucker. I'm doling out money out of my pocket. I gave Steen money out of my pocket to him for his expenses. I gave the ring crew money out of my pocket. Hunter was doing the same fucking thing. And they said they're gone. Well, Joe Koff was going to have a colonoscopy on Monday morning. He had already told me that he was going to leave early. And fine, he's the boss. He didn't have to be there to begin with. Greg, the office boy, being the good stooge that he was, had to drive Joe, who apparently is not able to find his way to the Pittsburgh airport an hour away. Greg's got to leave to drive him. Ross, the merchandise weasel, packs his shit up and leaves because nobody's buying anything at fucking midnight when they've been sitting in a fucking refrigerator for goddamn 6 hours. So that leaves my old friend Gary Juster, who wandered in from Starbucks at 3 in the afternoon, and who the last words I spoke to him when I went up to him up front at 4 in the afternoon, I said, when are they going to turn the heat on? He said, they can't turn the heat on. They'll melt the ice floor. We were literally, the ring was on an ice rink. This isn't an ice rink like the Pittsburgh Penguins play on. This is an ice rink like, does your kid want a birthday party, right? I said, I've run arenas where they turn the heat on. No, oh no. That's the professional ice floor setup. This ice floor setup, if they turn the heat on, it will melt the fucking ice. They had the green shit like this that you roll out under the fucking Christmas tree. That's what was in between the fucking ice floor and the ring. And I told him, my last words to him was, you said if you didn't make it look good, I'd never let you forget it. Well, you didn't make it look good, and I'm never going to let you forget it, motherfucker. As soon as, boom, Carino got pinned 1, 2, 3, Gary told somebody, well, I'm tired. It's midnight. I'm going back to the hotel. It's a long drive. And he took off, and he left too. So now, I'm in a building that I didn't want to be in, just having done a television production that I was embarrassed to be associated with. I told everybody what was going to happen and they didn't listen to me. I've got an ambulance pulling up to the back door to carry a potentially paralyzed wrestler off to the fucking hospital. And I'm the one in charge of this fucking thing because nobody else stuck around to help me. And I told everybody there what I thought of everybody that wasn't there. And then I went and fucking paced around the goddamn back, screaming at the top of my lungs that I was going to kill Greg Gilliland. And Mark Davis was like, because one of the stooges, see, one of the people that worked at the station in Baltimore, he was a stooge because he was an old Sinclair guy. He wasn't a wrestling guy. He'll hear you. I said, oh, let me make sure he does. Greg Gilliland is a no good cocksucker and I'm going to break his fucking neck when I see him this week. Just to make sure that he got that message. I punched a few things, kicked a few things. And then I fucking went back to my hotel down the road. And one of the crew members actually was so frazzled by the experience and had an argument with, I won't mention anybody's name to embarrass anybody, but had an argument with another of the crew members that instead of riding in the same car 5 miles back to the hotel, he decided to fucking go down to the fucking convenience store on the corner and get a cab, not knowing that no cab would come out there in the middle of nowhere at that time of night. He ended up walking back to the hotel in that weather. It took him till 5 o'clock in the morning to walk through the woods, not through town, through the woods to get to the fucking hotel. That's how frazzled he was by this whole experience. And I went back to the fucking hotel and waited for Hunter to call me and tell me that no, Carino's okay, nothing's broken, his ribs are all right, it just badly bruised ribs, he got his wind back, they've x-rayed him, he's sore, but he's going to be okay, he's up and around, they're bringing him back to the hotel. Then I called my wife and I told her, I've got to get away from these fucking people, I'm going to die. I actually broke down in fucking tears and said that this fucking thing is over, it's done with, it is fucking destroyed, it is never, we have lost our chance to make a first impression, these people have driven me out of my mind, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And I went over to the Eaton Park, the nation's finest microwave cooking, and I had a goddamn double cheeseburger platter, and I had the fucking mighty lumberjack country fucking breakfast all in front of me, and I sat there and realized that I'm on the road 120 something nights a year, Hilton Diamond member, most of it in Baltimore, but all over the place. I've put 40-something thousand miles a year on my vehicle, 3 years in a row, in addition to 120-something nights a year in a hotel. I have promised the wrestlers that they're going to get more work, and they've got less work. The internet pay-per-view fucking thing that I thought was going to take off, we have pretty much completely run ourselves out of. This fucking dick-lick fucking office boy that's made all these decisions, caused all these PR problems. Everybody blames me, so the guys are looking at me sideways because they're not getting any work. The fucking Ring of Honor fans that knew Ring of Honor existed blame me for ruining the fucking booking, even though the shows were pretty much as good as they ever were. It's just that nobody saw the pay-per-views, and the fucking ones that we did have were overshadowed by the fact that they weren't fucking drawing and all the other goddamn drama that was going on. Gary Juster, my close personal friend that helped me broker this deal, that I stuck with him and we were together, the two musketeers from the beginning of the whole thing. Turned out that I was this and he was that. And basically it had become a giant rib on me. And I had told Kevin Kelly and Hunter and Mark Davis and Dan Bynum, the people that I cared about at the building, that fuck it, I'm almost as close to Louisville as I am to fucking Baltimore. And that's where I'm going. And Mark, and actually all of them, had asked me, please come. They didn't want to see me quit. And they said, please come to fucking Baltimore. Also, please don't leave us stuck with these goddamn shows. Because one of them's 6 minutes heavy and one of them's 2 minutes under. And I had that shit in my head because when Steen would go off on his tangents and try to appeal to the fucking 10% instead of the 90% and fucking do an 8-minute promo when he had 4 minutes for it, I, in my head, was able to keep track of how we were going to edit it. And when guys would go short, I, in my head, had an idea of how we could elongate VTRs. And when guys' matches would go long, but they were good, and we didn't want to cut any of those out, I, in my head, when I'd seen the rest of the show, had the other places where we could trim 15 seconds here and 12 seconds there, and etc., so we could make it all fit. And I didn't want to leave them with a plate full of fucking steaming shit waved under their nose. So I agreed to come to Baltimore. So the next day I got up and went to fucking Baltimore. And I was at the TV station, and Joe, preparing for his colonoscopy, calls me and says, Jim, we cannot have you threatening to kill the office employees and doing this and to give human resources, etc., etc. And this just is not going to work. And I said, no, it's not, Joe. And you don't have to worry about it. I'm going home. I'm not going to kill anybody while I'm here. I would be in Louisville already, but I didn't want to leave them with this shit. So you can fire me, or I can quit, or we can go Broadway or whatever, but it's time that we don't do this anymore. And that's where I did the shows and came home, and I wish them all the best, but and that's when I started my therapy. Now we can start talking about the personal stuff, because that's when I started because the first thing, you have to hit bottom, right? When you're an addict.
Yes.
You have to hit bottom, and you have to realize that you have to quit, you have to get away from it. You can't do this anymore, and that's where I got to that point.
Because you're a wrestling addict.
Yes, and I'm the only person in the history of wrestling that has ever gone to rehab by not leaving their house.
Right. Well, it's good that you're calm. We're going to talk about...
it's good that I'm calm. Where the fuck has he been?
It's good that you're calm now, because we have to talk about 1989 later for 3 hours. And
that'll be fun.
Jim Herd.
Well, but that'll be cathartic.
Sounds like Ring of Honor is going to be fine. Two quickies. You have a wrestling marriage that works.
Oh my God.
Why?
Well, it's not really a wrestling marriage, and she hates. But she hates wrestling worse than I do now. She'll go on to comic book conventions with me. She'll go to the horror movie convention. She won't go to well, I've only done 2 in a year. This one and the Charlotte Fan Fest, and she likes Charlotte, but it just well, no, part of it was she got into it, as a teenager, because she was a fan because her friends were fans, and she did it for fun because they did shows, and I don't think she expected to make any money out of it. And then she worked OVW as Sin, the Wicked Witch of Kentuckiana, because I was following, since I was booking a wrestling school. Everybody said, well, he gave his wife and his friends jobs. No, Kenny Bolin is one of the classic characters. I mean, wrestling made him. He's been a lifelong wrestling fan, and Lawler was his idol, and he is one of the most entertaining character. He is a character. It's not like he has a character. Kenny Bolin is Kenny Bolin. He actually had to tone him down for television. So he was a manager, And she was a manager, the Disciples of Sin, because I was running a wrestling school, and the nature of the talent was that we were going to get new guys that were going to train and going to go somewhere. But it's just like Jimmy Hart's First Family in Memphis. It's just like J.J. Dillon's group in Florida. Just like, Bobby Heenan had a family in the AWA for all those years. If you keep your managers, you keep a group, and you keep heat on them as heels, then you have a brand name that never goes away. So Bolin Services, it didn't matter who was in it. Bolin Services was a group. The Disciples of Sin was a group. She did, by the time that she was doing that, she never had any pretense of wanting to work for the WWF, because for one thing, she saw what people had to go through. And also, it wasn't like we were both coming up together. I'd already done everything I wanted to do as a performer. I wasn't getting in her way, whatever. So it was good that with a wrestling nut like me, that she was into the business enough to where she liked it to work like that, and we could talk about it. And she actually, and Kenny both, between the two of them, have talked to me enough to pick up enough that they know, they got a little bit better education because we were interacting on a personal basis instead of just them being in class. But that's why it worked, because it wasn't really it wasn't like two people coming up together, etc.
I mean, you continued to work pretty regularly after. Would you go into the Hall of Fame if it was offered to you? Would you go in alone? Would you go in with Midnight?
Well,
how would you do it?
Everybody keeps asking me that, and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it either way. If they asked the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette to be in the Hall of Fame, yes, I would do it in a heartbeat, because I would never deny Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, and Stan Lane that honor. And I think really the only way that I should go in the Hall of Fame as a performer would be with the Midnight Express, because that's where I did my best work. And I don't know why that they would want to put me in just because I managed Yokozuna and Davey and Owen, because that was brief and it wasn't that memorable to me, at least. It wasn't anything approaching the work with the Midnight Express. So yeah, if they wanted Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express, I certainly wouldn't stand in the boys' way, and I'd be there with bells on, because they'd be being honored too. And if it was just me, I don't know. Depends on who asked me and how they phrased it, but I don't see them asking the question, so I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out the answer.
All right. What do you watch on TV?
Oh my God, I love anything Gordon Ramsay does. Imagine that. Stacy says, and the cameraman pops. Stacy says Gordon Ramsay is I'm either Gordon Ramsay in a wrestling school, or he's me in a kitchen, or however, what I'm trying to say. Love Fox Animation Domination. Family Guy is the funniest program on the air. The Simpsons is still, I still watch it just out of habit's sake. I love American Dad. Bill Maher is God. Since George Carlin died, Bill Maher is the American that I most admire, and I never miss Real Time. And I never, Religulous was my favorite movie. He says shit that he don't care whether people don't like it or not. If it's true, he says it, and he doesn't care what people think about it. I love that. I am enamored of Boardwalk Empire, of the HBO revolving shows. We watch Game of Thrones. True Blood has pretty much jumped the shark at this point. It was good at one time, but Boardwalk Empire is my favorite program. I've actually also started watching Bar Rescue, and John Taffer and you're like, you haven't watched it, but he tickles me. It's a new concept on people yelling at people about how to get their shit together. I watch a lot of Turner Classic Movies because I love old movies. I love classic movies. I've always been a fan of pop culture and movies, rock and roll, music, entertainment of any television, radio, old-time radio. I have an entire wall of shelves in my TV room with books that I've had since I was 8, 9 years old on not only cinema and every genre of movie from silence to modern day, but also television from the pioneer days to today, the personalities behind it. I love the music business and the business behind the music business.
How come you're not talking about that stuff more? It's infinitely more interesting than wrestling.
Well, it's actually because until I have done this is the bubble I've been in with wrestling.
I would have loved to have sat here and talked to you about the French New Wave and the Italian neorealists.
Well, as a matter of fact, and the only reason I was doing a podcast for a while.
Who the fuck would watch that?
Well,
Can you imagine that?
Nobody would buy it. I was doing a podcast for a while, basically because it was a phone call that I could just do with Tommy Fierro once a week because I didn't know how to work the shit. But now I'm talking to a guy about doing a podcast. I won't mention any names or dates or whatever in case it doesn't come through. But I'd like to do a podcast about more subjects, especially I've always been a fan of entertainment and comic books and pop culture, and just I was never a math kid. I can't I can do my gazentas, 2 gazenta 6 3 times, 2 gazenta 8 4 times, etc. I can add, subtract, and do my gazentas, but I don't like math. But I always English, history. I'm hell on Jeopardy. We DVR Jeopardy so we can zip through the commercials, but I'm hell on Jeopardy, especially any general knowledge stuff. Music trivia from my years with Stan Lane, but I've always loved any kind of entertainment, and not only what's on the screen or what's presented to the public, but the business behind it and the direction and the construction and etc. of same.
Wonderful.
And
there's a whole new dimension to you. Maybe I'll continue to talk to you. After
and then politics also, to be honest. And I won't go off on a rant here.
Oh yeah, please.
I won't. But the reason why I first got into it, because when I had pretty much given up on wrestling when I was working for TNA was 2007 leading into 2008, when the market was crashing and Barack Obama was starting to run for president, and we were seeing what George Bush had fucking done to us, and I had the time, because that's all I was doing was going to TNA every couple of weeks, so I had the time to sit there and watch the news all day, and that was the first time actually that I'd been out of obsessing about wrestling long enough to really see what I would study history. Oh, this happened 30 years ago or 40 years ago. I always liked that stuff, but I wasn't keeping up on what was going on today. And then when I found out, that's when I started getting pissed. And especially, I could figure out what was going on today because my bank accounts kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I started getting hot. I figured George Bush, every day for the rest of his life, should come to my house and work in my yard, because he cost me my landscaping in 2008, along with $400,000 or so. And Barack Obama got it back for me. And that's why I like him and don't like the other guy. And also,
the other guys are trying to take it away from you.
And the other guy's trying to take it away from me again. But I finally got some stuff planted. But I'll say this, I'm sorry. I don't care whether I offend anybody or not. Anybody that can listen to Barack Obama speak and not think that he is the most level-headed, articulate, intelligent, reasonable, most common sense guy that has been in front of a political microphone in decades, possibly since Kennedy, and instead think these raving batshit fucking lunatics have any kind of point. It makes me so mad. I want to just take them down and throttle them and rip their fucking windpipes out and fucking play fucking Dixie on them.
I can't comment. It wouldn't be professional.
It's just,
final
it's
five.
insane.
Here's the final five. Ready for the five
What,
count.
are we almost done?
Oh, for this one.
For this? Seriously? We haven't even started.
Dinner with one person, dead or alive. Who is it?
Oh, Jesus. No, not Jesus.
It's a fine choice.
No, well, we'd argue because he started a lot of shit. I will say also that organized religion has been responsible, in my opinion. No, in my opinion, over the last 2,000 years, organized religion has been responsible for more death, more destruction, more murders, more persecution, more genocide, more destruction of accumulated human knowledge, and more ill will and basically bad feelings amongst humankind than any other despot, dictator, ruler, or war of any kind, or common or natural occurrence of any kind. Organized religion, and it's going to be what eventually, if we ever do blow this fucking planet up before we get smart, religion or religious ideals are going to be behind it. And that's what Bush was trying to do with the Middle East, is create some kind of holy war, because the goddamn Christians are not as bad as the Muslims, because the Muslims will blow themselves up. Maybe actually the Christians are worse than the Muslims, because the Muslims will blow themselves up to fuck with people that don't believe what they believe in, but the Christians, they won't make that commitment. They want to kill the other people, but they won't blow themselves up. I think they're all fucking nuts. Let's just get along, since this is the place we got, and we only got a certain amount of time, so I don't give a fuck whether they believe in an invisible man in the sky or not. Let's just not fuck with each other and don't blow up the fucking planet. But since people who think that after they die they're going somewhere that's better, they're dangerous. If everybody thought, shit, I got to take care of the life I've got, because after this is over with I'm going to be a box in the ground, there'd be a lot less fucking murder and a lot less religious idealism.
It's a scary thing to think that only our actions are guiding us and that it's over after this. And bills and gorilla.
Yes, it's a scary thing to think that you're going to a better place when you die, because then you want to hurry that shit up. I know I've got a box with worms waiting for me, so therefore that's why I'm trying to prolong this. You're starting to shake hands with me. Who do I want to go to dinner with? What are the 5 questions? You don't even fucking give me a chance.
Who do you want, dead or alive? Because we're not going to get there. I'm not going to get my final.
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive. Who would you sit at dinner with?
Alfred Hitchcock.
Wonderful.
He'll take anything at this point.
Most illegal thing you've ever attempted or done?
Trying to run over Terry Landell in the parking lot in Knoxville when he pissed me off.
Most irrational fear that you have?
Probably flying. I know it's safe, but I don't want to be there. I'm claustrophobic. I get closed in. I get fucking freaked out. I'm way up in the air. I have no control. It's all that thing, but probably flying.
If you could go back and tell young Jim Cornette anything, what would it be?
Well, fuck, if I could do that, I'd just smarten myself up to every stupid thing and every mistake I've made and every crook I've ever fucking trusted that lied to me, and then that's, you wouldn't have time.
It'd be a long conversation.
By the time that I finished telling young Jim what old Jim knows, young Jim would be old Jim. Yeah, so I'd meet myself in the middle.
And if there is a heaven.
If heaven ain't a lot like Dixie, I don't want to go.
And you get to the pearly gates, what would you like to hear your maker say as you arrive?
Well, I guess he'd say you were fucking wrong, weren't you? And I'd have to say, well, I guess I was.
But we still have a spot for you, or you'd be okay with that spot?
It's like the Hall of Fame. I ain't gonna lose any sleep over it. But it's just that I need documentation. I need some more. I don't take things at face value. If somebody is going to tell me something that on the face of it sounds absurd and impossible or too good to be true or not believable, I need some more evidence. It's like, I'll leave you with this, and then I promise we will cut this off. Because I've used this analogy in several places. I used it in Charlotte at the Q&A. Pawn Stars, we talked about this at breakfast. Fans, folks, children of all ages. On Pawn Stars, if the guy walks in with the Paul McCartney autographed guitar with a certificate of authenticity, the first thing they do is they call in an expert. Mm-hmm. And he examines the certificate and he says, I'm sorry, this is a phony and the autograph is forged, and they kick him out of the store. But if a guy all by himself goes up the top of a mountain or out in the middle of a desert or someplace, and he's gone for a while and he comes back and he tells everybody, hey, I just talked to God and he's got a whole list of shit he don't want y'all to be doing anymore. They just take it at face value. Can you tell me that's how, from L. Ron Hubbard to who, Joseph Smith has started Mormonism, et cetera, to Moses coming down from, he's got a list of shit he don't want you to do, and I talked to him and he gave me the scoop and here it is. What, seriously? Let's investigate a little more deeply in this.
Another time.
Another time, well, okay, we'll do the thing another time. Why do we have to cut this shit off so quick?
Thank you for watching.
Thanks, folks.
Are you still watching?
Sorry.
Thank you for watching.